Hi, this is Dan. I'm the founder of the We Get Around Referral Network and the Matterport User Group Forum. Today I'm with Chris and Jacek with Proclaim USA here in Atlanta. Tell us a little bit about what we're about to do today.
So right now we're about to do a scope of a property where there was a water loss and there's an insurance claim, and what we're doing is automating this process of taking pictures of the damage of the property and taking measurements as well, and we're using Matterport to do that, to eliminate the time that's put into doing that manually.
Okay, so we're actually in a home that has had water damage as a result of a toilet overflowing constantly without the homeowner actually knowing.
Correct.
So I think we're talking about doing three things as a result of scanning. So first, we're going to use the Matterport Pro 3D camera to scan the entire basement. We're in the office, but there's a bathroom, a bedroom, and take the entire space. And I think Jacek, I think we talked about three things that you might use the resulting. Help me out with.
Right. One would be for estimating.
First is for estimating.
Right.
So what does that mean?
Once we have the information, I can then view it and have a virtual
tour. Measurements.
Have all the
Okay.
measurements.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scan the space, and the camera is going to capture both the photography and the data.
Right.
So the camera captures an object file that We Get Around is going to convert it to a SketchUp file and provide you with the SketchUp file.
Correct.
So the first is to use it for measuring purposes.
Right.
And the second?
Second would be for just for documentation for the file.
So the second would be documentation. We're talking about two kinds of documentation. First is the 300, obviously the walk around, the walk through the entire space. And then second is to be able to export still pictures, essentially
Right.
screen grabs of pictures within the environment.
Right.
So second is documentation. And a third use?
Third one would be
The 3D walkthrough.
So a 3D walkthrough. So in the event that you had to talk, in the event that the insurance claim actually went to perhaps trial and
Or even
prior, that the walkthrough can be used as the visual storytelling tool to
Right.
help people really understand the space, unlike a photo, which is an edited view, and you really can't appreciate that the water damage started here and it went through here and got under the bookcase and under everything.
Absolutely.
So really talking about three things. One is the use of the data for measurement. Two is documentation. And third is visual storytelling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even potentially a fourth, which is virtual reality. So in the event that you really need to have someone have an immersive experience walking through the space, to be able to convert the Matterport Spaces 3D tour to virtual reality to enable anyone to walk through the space. Now we're doing this today in a home in Atlanta, and this is not a recreation or anything. This homeowner's actually had damage. But I think what we're really talking about is perhaps a bigger use case for Matterport photographers across the U.S. and around the globe, which is commercial spaces. So in the event that a commercial building has a loss of perhaps $100,000 or more, or $50,000 or more,
$100,000 or more, or $50,000 or more, I think one of the most important things for someone after a loss is documenting that damage. Once the work has been complete, once that damage is gone, you can only do so much through pictures. So by essentially having that walkthrough, that 3D walkthrough, where you could essentially go back to where, when the damage was present, you're able to move forward in the process a lot quicker without having to wait for a final decision from the carrier to move forward with fixing a home or a property. So it definitely could shorten that span of the time it's going to take from loss to fixing.
Okay, and then in fact, let's go back. Proclaim USA, New Orleans,
2012. So we represented over 200 homeowners down in New Orleans on flood insurance claims. We're dealing directly with FEMA, and we basically, for every property, we have to go through and manually scope and take pictures and measurements. And something like this, especially on a massive scale like that, is a huge benefit for loss in time. And actually, over about 60 of those had to go to trial. Or end up a lawsuit. A few of them did go to trial. So in that setting, this would have been extremely valuable in being able to show a judge the property in a 3D walkthrough instead of just having pictures.
So, Chris, so in the case of the problem that the Matterport solution solves, The problem is doing 250 adjustments requires an adjuster to walk through the house and laser measure the space and to create a map, and it's somewhat of a time-consuming process.
Absolutely.
So the goal here would be to replace the time that it takes the adjuster to walk through a house to enable the photographer to actually do that. So that's the problem. I think what I'm hearing we're solving is first is saving time on creating all the key measurements that are used in order to calculate how much drywall, how much paneling, how much floor covering, how much ceiling, and you essentially need all those measurements to do that. So rather than have someone literally walk through the space and do all the measurements, to have the SketchUp file to be able to have someone like Jacek be able to import it into his 3D modeling software and do all the measurements. And I think second I heard again in that case in New Orleans was the documentation in terms of photos. The third documentation was the 3D model in terms of walk around. And imagine if you were going to trial with FEMA to be able to have the virtual, literally the virtual reality experience, to be able to take a jury or a judge or an arbitrator through the space to really feel like they were right there when that damage occurred.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would add to that, Chris?
Yeah, the only other point I would make is that, yeah, it also, with the original scope, you know, it's not, Jacek is probably the most knowledgeable when it comes to what needs to be done to put a property back to its pre-loss condition. And he's, a lot of times, because of location or time, not able to get inside of every property. So this allows the person who has the most knowledge and brings the most value in being inside a property, essentially brings that property to him instead of him having to go to it. And so it allows someone who maybe might not have 30 years of experience in the field that Jacek does to take, you know, a virtual reality or a 3D mock-up of the property, and then Jacek can come in and essentially be inside the property and do a job that, you know, essentially he would normally have to travel across the country to do.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is efficiency of the most knowledgeable and expert person to actually understand and interpret the space from an adjustment standpoint. That perhaps some of the adjusters, perhaps help me out here, may not have had the years of experience, may not have had the classroom training that one would hope that in the field in order to really understand what they're looking at and what the potential repair claims are.
Sure, and absolutely, and something like that can be extremely valuable in some situations. You know, it could be one or two items that get missed just by somebody not having the 30 years of experience, and that those one or two items could cost tens of thousands of dollars. So in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of the product and the service that you're offering the policyholder, you know, it's definitely a better product as well.
Yeah, and I know that I reached out to Proclaim USA. My wife and I have had water damage in our house, and we've been through the adjustment process, and we think there's an opportunity for us to actually get more money by having an experienced team reevaluate the adjustment that was done, perhaps maybe not by the person who had the most years of experience, who maybe wrote it up as one coat of paint instead of two, and no primer and other materials that were missing. So again, having the opportunity to leverage the expertise with one person in one location evaluating all the assets. Jacek, anything to add to that?
Yeah, also the measuring, that's what it solves. You only measure everything once. You don't have to have the contractor measure, the restoration company measure it. I mean, it saves time that. You can also review file with electricians or plumbers.
Yeah, even before you go on, because just to emphasize this point, having been through this personally, excuse me, having been through this personally with our home, let's see if I can count the number of people who've actually been to our house to measure. Okay, first was the adjuster came out. Actually first was I think the remediation company that came out, and they had to do some calculation about what we were going to be charged. Second was the adjuster that came out and did all their measurements. The third is our general contractor came out and did measurements. Fourth, the assurance adjuster actually came out a second time to remeasure. And then five, we've now had come to our house. The general contractor is arranged for the team that's going to do the floors. The floor person measured. He had the painting team come out. The painters measured. He had we're having some ceiling tile work done. So yet another person is measuring area. So I'm trying to think. We had floor covering, wall covering, ceiling, and I'm trying to think if we had anybody else that actually come out and measure.
Twice,
So and all in any of the subcontractors. So So anyone that's involved in doing the repairs of our space has had to come out and measure. So measure. Certainly, I think all of us would agree that in the not too distant future, being able to rely on Matterport scanning to be able to scan the space and have those measurements available to anyone. I know that sometimes there's some questions about the accuracy of measurement, and I think probably the reasonable answer to say, it's good enough. It's probably as close as a human person would actually do a measurement anyway. Second, it's good enough for doing the adjustment for insurance, good enough for the general contractor, for example, to quote to us on what it's going to take to do the project, and then probably good enough for the subs to quote on painting, floors, paneling, wall treatment. And then at some point when the team that gets assigned been awarded doing windows or floors or something, they're going to come out and do their measurement, but that's standard practice whether somebody else is measuring the space anyway. So Jacek, forgive me, I cut you off on measuring, but I thought measuring was such an important thing to touch on.
It's true, it is.
Anything else to share?
No, that's it.
That's great. Chris?
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay, so great. We've been visiting with Chris and Jacek with Proclaim USA, based in Atlanta. I'm Dan Smigrod with the founder of the We Get Around Referral Network and the Matterport User Group Forum here on location in Atlanta. Thanks for joining us.